Why was she the only one in the hangar who didn't laugh? The sound carried everywhere, boots scraping on oil-stained concrete, tools clattering, voices sharp with derision. Soldiers and mechanics huddled in corners, their chatter rising above the whine of cooling fans. Yet she stood apart, sleeves rolled, head bent, eyes locked on the Apache's jammed minigun. Zephyr Thorne kept her silence the way some people held a weapon, steady, deliberate, sharp enough to wound without moving. They thought she couldn't do it. She could feel it in the way their stares pressed against her back, in the smirks traded like currency. To them she was invisible, an afterthought, a name they barely remembered scrawled on a duty roster. But now the entire base had gathered to watch her fail. 3 hours until mission departure. 3 hours until Colonel Callahan's bird either soared into combat or sat useless on the tarmac, and they'd handed it to her. The new mechanic, the quiet one, the one they assumed was a misfit too stubborn to quit. "Perfect," drawled Chief Riker Blackwood, voice like gravel dragged across metal. His bulk filled the space behind her, casting a shadow over her tools. "Mission critical. Colonel's personal Apache. And we've got a jammed minigun. Couldn't ask for better entertainment." The chuckles spread, hushed but cruel. Someone muttered, "Does she even know which end fires?" Zephyr didn't answer. She never did. Words wasted breath and breath wasted time. Instead, she selected her tools, deliberate, calm, each choice betraying none of the speed her hands longed for. She moved slowly, as though she were teaching herself a new task rather than revisiting a system she had stripped blindfolded under tracer fire. She forced herself into that rhythm, measured, mundane, unremarkable. But her memory betrayed her. The touch of cold steel beneath her fingers flashed into something else. Burned flesh, blood slicked across her palms, the night sky torn open by fire. She swallowed, forced the vision down, and set her shoulders. "Not here. Not now." "Clock's ticking, Thorne," Riker barked. "Colonel doesn't like excuses." She climbed onto the Apache's frame. The bird's skin radiated stored heat from morning sun and engine tests, the metal beneath her hands humming faintly like a beast held in chains. She opened the access panel. Her breath left her in a long, steady stream. The first problem revealed itself quickly, a feed tray jam. That was the obvious fault, the one anyone could have spotted, but Zephyr knew better. Faults were rarely alone. She dug deeper. Behind the tray, the firing pin assembly showed microscopic fractures, hairline lines that glinted like scars. Left unchecked, they would tear the weapon apart mid-flight. 2 hours gone, sweat clung to her neck. The hangar stank of fuel, dust, and nerves. Then the double doors groaned open. Silence rippled through the crowd. Colonel Ever Callahan strode in, jaw set, eyes sharp. At his side walked Captain Saren Nazari, flight suit zipped, helmet under her arm. She carried herself like every second wasted here was a knife pressed to her throat. "Status report," Callahan demanded. Riker straightened, suddenly smaller. "Working on it, sir. Complicated issue. We may need to." "Who's on it?" "Specialist Thorne, sir." The colonel's gaze followed Riker's gesture and landed on Zephyr's half-hidden frame. His brow lifted, skepticism plain. "Specialist Thorne is qualified for this." Riker hesitated, the moment stretching too long. "Perhaps we should." "I need an MX-17 pressure gauge," Zephyr cut in, voice quiet, still not looking up. "Military spec." The hangar froze, conversation stopped, heads turned. The MX-17 was rare, specialized, knowledge few outside advanced weapons divisions possessed. "We don't stock those," Riker said quickly. "Yes, we do." The voice came from the back. Quartermaster Sergeant Exora Reeves stepped forward, expression neutral but her eyes locked on Zephyr. "I'll get it." The exchange cut the air sharp. Something unsaid passed between Reeves and Zephyr, a recognition no one else caught. Reeves disappeared. Captain Nazari stepped closer, her impatience bristling. "We're out of time, Specialist. That bird flies in less than an hour." Zephyr didn't flinch. "It'll be operational in 20 minutes. 20, Nazari's laugh was cold. Diagnostics alone take 30. Not if you bypass redundancies. Focus on the primary firing mechanism. The words slipped before she could stop them. Too much, too specific, knowledge no specialist should have. Reeves returned with the tool, passing it to Zephr with a subtle nod. Again, that quiet recognition sparked. Zephr caught it, pocketed it in silence. She leaned back into the weapon system, letting her body block view of her arm. But as she reached for a recessed bolt, her sleeve rode higher. Just a glimpse, enough. Captain Nazari froze. The chatter of the hangar blurred, dimmed, as her eyes locked on the ink revealed beneath Zephyr's skin. A stylized phantom raven, gold eyes, 3 lightning bolts. The tattoo wasn't decoration. It was a brand known only in whispers, Umbra Division, the kind of unit officers dismissed as rumor, soldiers dismissed as myth. Nazari's breath hitched. Her body snapped to rigid attention. She saluted, perfect, crisp, immediate. "Spectre Actual," she said, voice tight with shock. "Ma'am, we weren't informed Umbra had personnel on base." The hangar went silent as stone, tools slipped from hands, eyes widened. Colonel Callahan's face darkened in disbelief. Zephr didn't move. For a long beat she let the silence weigh, let their realization twist through the air. Then she straightened, every inch of her posture shifting. Shoulders rolled back, chin lifted, a commander's bearing sliding into place like armor. "At ease, Captain." Her voice was quiet, but it carried. "I'm not here officially." The spell broke like glass. Whispers rippled, Caracum extraction, ghost ops. A legend walked among them. Zephyr's eyes moved across the hangar. Men and women who had smirked at her now stared as though at a ghost risen from shadow. Her gaze landed last on Riker. "The Apache is operational," she said, tone flat, final. "Targeting will need recalibration post-mission. It will hold." Riker's lips moved pale. "Commander, I owe you an apology." "Unnecessary," she cut him off, no malice in it. "You assess based on appearance. That is your job, learn from it." Colonel Callahan stepped forward, voice low, weight heavy. "Umbra Division, that's classified, beyond my clearance, and yet you're here undercover fixing my Apache. Why?" Zephyr's eyes held his. "Perhaps we should discuss that privately." Callahan nodded, no hesitation. "My office." The crowd parted for her. They didn't smirk anymore. They stepped back as if distance could shield them from the truth now walking in their hangar. Captain Nazari fell into stride beside her, voice low, measured. "Mission Commander, should we proceed?" "Yes, but modifications are required immediately." Sergeant Reeves intercepted them at the door, voice pitched low. "Commander, comms were breached at 400, unauthorized access, mission parameters compromised." Zephr didn't blink. "I know, that's why I'm here." Callahan's head snapped toward her. "You mean?" "The Apache was never the objective. Your mission is walking into an ambush, Colonel, and we're going to turn it against them." The words landed like a detonator, quiet but world-shifting. How do you tell a room full of officers that everything they thought they knew was already compromised? The colonel's office had been transformed into a tactical hive, maps unfurled across tables, digital displays glowing against cinderblock walls, tension thick as fuel fumes. The air tasted like metal and coffee left too long on a burner. Every officer in the room glanced toward her, some openly skeptical, others quietly unnerved. Zephyr Thorne no longer looked like the mechanic they'd mocked. The uniform she wore was the same, standard issue fatigues, but on her it read differently now. Authority clung to her posture, to the unflinching steadiness in her gaze. Even Callahan, weathered and proud, seemed to weigh his words carefully. 3 weeks ago," she began, her voice steady, controlled, "intelligence flagged unusual comms originating from this base. Encrypted, routed through back channels. High probability of infiltration, possibly targeting today's mission." Her fingers tapped a sequence on the console. Data streams and intercepted packets lit the screen in coded flashes. Command needed confirmation, but sending a known operative would have tipped the infiltrator, so they sent me new maintenance tech, no rank worth noticing, invisible. The weight of her words pressed against the room. "You're saying," Callahan leaned forward, jaw tight, "my mission is compromised." "It's worse." Zephr pulled up a satellite image, ridge lines marked with heat blooms. "Your flight path takes you directly into an ambush. Portable anti-air systems deployed in the last 48 hours. You won't clear the valley alive." A cold hush settled. Captain Nazari's voice broke it, sharp as a blade. "How do you know this?" "Because I intercepted the transmissions myself." Zephr zoomed into another file, faint coordinates, scrambled chatter decrypted. "The infiltrator is watching us even now. They needed you to launch as planned, to walk willingly into the kill zone. That was the trap." Riker shifted uncomfortably at the back, his earlier bravado long gone. "If you knew all this, why let us treat you like some rookie?" Zephyr's eyes found his, steady, unflinching. "Because the infiltrator needed to believe it too. If I revealed myself too soon, we'd never draw them out." Silence again, this time heavier. Callahan exhaled, dragging a hand across his face. "So what now?" "Now," Zephr said, "we spring our own trap." The room stilled as she laid out her plan. Not hurried, not flashy. Methodical the way one explains inevitability. Captain Nazari would fly the mission, but at the deviation point she'd shift course, appear vulnerable. The enemy would reveal themselves. Meanwhile, counter teams, already briefed by Reeves, would flank the ridge line and close the jaws. It was clean, precise, ruthless. Yet beneath the clinical delivery, Zephyr's thoughts twisted. She remembered another valley, another trap, Caracum. 23 operators gone, swallowed by fire and silence. She hadn't told them yet, not the whole of it. Maybe she never would. Her voice never wavered. "Higher risk," Callahan said grimly. "Higher risk is sending them into an ambush blind," Zephr countered. "At least this way, we control the board." The colonel studied her long, his pride bending beneath something older, respect mixed with fear. At last he nodded. "We proceed." When the briefing dissolved into action, Riker lingered. He approached her cautiously, voice stripped of swagger. "Commander, about this morning." "It's forgotten," she replied without looking at him. "With respect, ma'am, it shouldn't be." His voice cracked, genuine this time. "I made assumptions, dangerous ones. I judged you by appearance, not by capability. That could have cost lives." Her eyes lifted, cold but not cruel. "Combat teaches hard lessons, Chief. Some learn through experience, others through failure. Which would you prefer?" His throat tightened. "Experience, ma'am, every time." For the first time, a ghost of a smile touched her mouth. "Good answer. I need your crew ready for rapid redeployment if this goes sideways. Can you handle that?" "Yes, ma'am." He saluted, not out of regulation but out of recognition. When he left, Captain Nazari approached, helmet cradled under one arm. Her skepticism had shifted into something sharper, respect edged with curiosity. "My team's prepping. 30 minutes until wheels up." "Good," Zephr replied. Then her tone dropped lower, more personal. "There are contingencies you need to understand." She pulled up a schematic of the Apache. Subtle modifications glowed red across the targeting system. Nazari frowned. "You sabotaged the colonel's bird." "Not sabotage, enhancement." Zephr pointed to the lines. "Prototype countermeasures. If you encounter missile lock, activate here. It'll buy you seconds." Nazari's eyes narrowed. "You planned this before your cover was blown." "I plan for contingencies, Captain. It's why I'm still alive." Her voice was matter-of-fact, but inside the words tasted bitter. Still alive. 2 words that carried the weight of 20 lost faces, names she didn't say anymore. There was more Nazari deserved to know. Zephr forced it out, slow, each syllable a stone. The Caracum extraction. Reeves mentioned it earlier. The record calls it successful, but 23 operators went in, 3 came out. I was one of them. Nazari froze. Her throat worked around words she didn't know how to ask. You commanded. I was point. Commander died in the first engagement. I made the call to proceed. We retrieved the assets, but at a cost no one recorded. Not truly. Her eyes locked on Nazari's, hard, almost pleading, though her tone never shifted. What we're about to do isn't so different. High risk, limited intel, critical objective. What made you continue Caracum? Nazari asked softly. The same thing driving today. Zephr handed her a small data chip. Sometimes the objective matters more than the risk. If primary extraction fails, these are your alternate coordinates. Memorize them, then destroy it. Nazari nodded, slipping the chip into her glove. For the first time, her eyes carried something like faith. The base outside throbbed with activity. Engines rumbled, crews shouted, boots pounded against concrete. Everyone moved with urgency, but only a handful knew the truth. To most, it was another mission, another fight. To Zephr, it was a knife balanced on edge. Callahan joined her in the command center, eyes on the live feeds of Nazari's team prepping the Apache. There's still something I don't understand. Umbra doesn't waste senior officers on counterintel. Why you? Why this mission? Zephyr's focus stayed on the screens, her voice cool, even. Because this isn't just about your base, Colonel. What they're after connects to something much larger, something tied to Caracum. He blinked, unsettled. That mission's closed. The mission is closed, she said. Its consequences are not. At that moment, Reeves' voice crackled through the comms. Commander, Target 3 is moving. Communication specialist, server room. Zephyr's eyes sharpened. Converge, don't apprehend yet, let them transmit. We need their contact. Callahan glanced at her, startled. You're letting him send intel. We need the receiver. Cut him now, we only close one end of the line. Her tone was final, absolute. On the main display, Nazari's Apache rolled onto the tarmac, rotors whining into motion. The comms officer counted down. Deviation point in 30. All units on standby. The entire base seemed to hold its breath. Soldiers unaware they were pawns. A commander pretending she was still only flesh and bone instead of the shadow every operative feared. And in the quiet between rotor beats, Zephr felt it again, the weight of ghosts. 23 into the valley. 3 came out. And now she was about to lead another team into the same fire. Only this time, she promised herself, someone else would be walking into the ambush. What does it feel like to wait for a trap you know is coming? In the command center, the hum of screens and the drone of calm chatter felt deafening against the silence in her head. Zephr stood still, eyes on the tactical displays, body taut with a predator's patience. Around her, officers shifted, murmured, exchanged tense glances, but she never moved. Valkyrie is airborne, the controller reported, voice clipped. On screen, Captain Nazari's Apache lifted into the pale morning sky, rotor wash scattering dust across the tarmac. The flight began like any other. Official route, standard departure vector, nothing unusual to an untrained eye. But Zephr knew every second ticked them closer to the deviation point, closer to the ambush waiting like teeth in the ridge. In the shadows of the room, Colonel Callahan studied her instead of the screens. He had commanded men into fire, buried soldiers under flags. But this woman, quiet, watchful, radiated something colder. She wasn't waiting for orders. She was waiting for inevitability. Target 3 is inside the server room, Reeves reported quietly, earpiece pressed against her cheek. Initiating unauthorized download. Zephyr's eyes flicked once toward the feed. The comm specialist sat stiffly at a terminal, fingers flying, sweat beading across his temple. His posture screamed nerves, not confidence. A courier, not an architect, exactly as she suspected. Hold positions, Zephr ordered. Let him finish. We want the transmission complete. Callahan's brow furrowed. You're gambling with mission parameters. I'm baiting the hook, she cut him off softly. The room tightened around her voice. Nobody argued. On the main screen, Nazari's Apache swept over the first ridgeline, sunlight flaring across its armored skin. Inside the cockpit, Nazari's jaw was locked, her co-pilot whispering checks through clenched teeth. They knew too much now. Every mountain shadow felt like a rifle sight, every glint of stone a missile tube. Deviation in 30 seconds, the tactical officer said. His tone was even, but his knuckles whitened against the console. Zephr inhaled once, slow and steady. She remembered another countdown, another valley. Caracum. 23 voices over comms, each steady until the first rocket struck. She shoved the memory back. Today would not echo that day. 10 seconds. Her hand rested lightly on the console, her voice low but firm. Stand by countermeasures. Counter-ambush team. Hold until my mark. Deviation now, the controller called. On screen, the Apache tilted, sliding into a sharp bank that veered off its filed path. A calculated vulnerability. A signal to anyone watching, here we are. Exposed. Almost immediately, red pulses lit up across the signal intercept board. Enemy comms flared alive. They've seen it, Reeves reported. Perfect. Zephyr's lips curved the faintest fraction. Now they'll have to talk to each other. Inside the server room, Target 3's screen lit with incoming commands. Confirmation. Instructions. The network was alive. Transmission complete, Reeves said. External contact established. Apprehend, Zephr ordered. Security teams burst into the server room, tackling the comm specialist before he could kill the feed. He shouted, panicked, thrashing against restraints, but it was already over. His transmission was logged, his handlers exposed. At that same second, on the ridge, missile locks screamed against Nazari's cockpit. Contact, Nazari's voice crackled through the comms. Missile lock engaging countermeasures. On the display, Zephr watched the prototype she'd wired that morning flare to life, thermal bursts splitting into decoys, multiple false signatures streaking the sky. The first missile veered, then another, drawn into chasing ghosts. The Apache jolted, rattled, but stayed alive. Counter-ambush team, Zephyr's voice cut through the tension, calm as ice. You have targeting data. Engage. From behind the ridges, hidden teams rose like shadows, unleashing controlled bursts of fire. The enemy, focused on the helicopter, never saw it coming. Positions lit, men scattered, equipment abandoned under sudden assault. The trap snapped shut. In the command center, the silence broke into a flood of voices. Reports, confirmations, data streams. Officers leaned forward, adrenaline making their words tumble. Colonel Callahan's eyes widened as the plan unfolded, every move choreographed with precision he hadn't thought possible. You planned this while pretending to be a mechanic, he muttered. Zephr didn't look at him. Her focus stayed on the feeds. Planning is what Umbra does, Colonel. We manage contingencies others don't even see. On the ridge, hostiles fell one by one. Equipment was seized, intel secured. Nazari's Apache pulled free, battered but intact. Hostiles neutralized, Reeves reported. Counter-ambush successful. Zephr gave one sharp nod. Nazari, you're clear to return. Well executed. For a moment the room breathed again. Officers unclenched fists, shoulders lowered, sighs escaped. The immediate danger had passed. But Zephr didn't relax. Her eyes stayed on the captured comms specialist now dragged through the hall, wrists bound, face pale. Something in his fear wasn't just fear of capture. It was fear of what he served. Commander, Callahan said, voice softer now, laced with awe. I'd say I'm impressed, but that feels inadequate. Save it, Zephr replied, already turning back to the data. This was Phase 1. Callahan blinked. Phase 1. The ambush was never the true objective. She tapped the intercepted files, scrolling past layers of encryption. They wanted distraction, noise. While we focused on the Apache, another operation moved. Reeves' head snapped up. Secondary infiltration. Zephr nodded once. Something deeper, something tied to Caracum. The word hit like a thunderclap. Callahan's lips parted, disbelief etched across his face. That mission. Closed, Zephr said evenly, but its consequences are not. She didn't say more. Not yet. Instead, she moved toward the door. Prep the interrogation room. I'll handle him myself. Callahan frowned. You think he'll talk? Her voice carried a finality that silenced the room. He doesn't know it yet, Colonel, but he already has. She walked out, every step quiet, deliberate. The kind of silence that unsettled even hardened men. Officers watched her go, a woman who had walked into their hangar invisible and now left like a shadow that carried the weight of wars. Behind her, Callahan whispered the thought gnawing at him. God help whoever she's hunting. The interrogation room was stark, bare walls, metal table, single light that left corners swallowed in shadow. Lieutenant Darrow, the comm specialist, sat rigid, his face pale but defiant. Zephr entered without ceremony, tablet in hand. She didn't sit immediately. She studied him, silent, long enough that the seconds stretched uncomfortable. He shifted under her gaze, but she said nothing. Finally, she placed the tablet on the table, sat, and leaned forward just slightly. You know who I am now. It wasn't a question. Darrow's jaw clenched. His eyes flickered, betraying recognition. Umbra division, he muttered. I thought you were just a rumor. That's the point. Zephr tapped the tablet. Files bloomed across the screen, intercepts, decrypted transmissions. You've been transmitting for 8 weeks. Classified data. But today's mission, it wasn't just about a helicopter. So tell me, why did it matter? I have nothing to say. His voice was flat, rehearsed. Zephr leaned forward, her tone soft, dangerous. I'm not interested in you, Lieutenant. You're a courier, not an architect. What I want is why this mission connects to Caracum. The name cracked him, barely. His eyes widened, then shuddered. Sweat dotted his brow. I don't know what you're talking about. She didn't press. Instead, she swiped the tablet again, revealing a hidden line of code buried in his transmission. This subsection, encrypted under your handler's directive. The tag Operation Nightshade. Officially, it doesn't exist, but Umbra knows it was the classified designation for Caracum. His composure slipped, just for a second. Whoever you're working for, Zephr continued softly, they know about Nightshade, and they wanted more than an ambush. They wanted something buried here, files, connected to what we pulled out of Caracum 3 years ago. Darrow swallowed hard, lips pressed into a thin line. His silence screamed louder than denial. Outside the glass, Callahan and Reeves watched. Callahan frowned. She isn't pressing him, isn't even interrogating. Reeves' voice was quiet, almost reverent. She doesn't need to. This isn't an interrogation. It's a conversation where only one side knows the script. Inside, Zephyr's tone lowered, softer than before. 3 years ago, we pulled 2 scientists out of Caracum. The record says defectors with intel on weapons. 20 operators died securing them. But that's not what they were building, was it? Helix protocol. The word landed like a gunshot. Darrow flinched just barely. Zephr leaned back, voice cool. So that's what your people wanted. Not the helicopter, not the mission, the archives here, Helix protocol. For the first time, true fear flickered in Darrow's eyes. And Zephr knew. The war she thought she'd buried had just stepped out of the shadows again. How do you protect something you're not even supposed to admit exists? The command center hummed with restless energy, but Zephyr's eyes were already somewhere else, on the invisible threads binding this operation to Caracum. She could feel the weight of it pressing in. Too many coincidences, too much precision. The ambush wasn't the goal, it was the cover. Callahan was still packing. I don't understand. What is this Helix protocol you keep referencing? Why haven't I been briefed on what's stored in my own base? Because officially, Zephr said, eyes hard on the screens, it doesn't exist. Reeves met her gaze. The two women didn't need words. They'd run enough black ops together to read the silence. Commander, Reeves said aloud, surveillance indicates no breaches in the archive feeds. Everything appears secure. Too secure, Zephr murmured. Reeves frowned. You think? Looped feed, subtle manipulation, check the timestamps. Reeves' fingers flew across her console. Within seconds, anomalies blinked red across the displays. The feeds were perfect, too perfect, repeating micro-patterns invisible to casual review. They've been in for 40 minutes. Zephyr's tone was matter-of-fact, almost cold. They already took what they came for. Callahan stiffened. The archives. Yes, and they masked it well enough that by the time we saw the surface ambush, their real team was already moving underground. Zephyr's jaw tightened. They weren't after the helicopter. They were after the Helix data. Callahan's face hardened. Then we lock it down. I'll lead the team myself. No, Zephyr's voice sliced the air. She didn't raise it, but it stopped him cold. If you storm the facility now, they'll expect it. They'll trigger whatever contingency they left behind. You'll lose more men, maybe the entire base. He bristled at being checked in his own command center, but Reeves spoke before he could answer. She's right, sir. This smells like an exfil burn, if they planted a trap. Zephr was already moving. Reeves, you're with me. We go in silent through the maintenance tunnels. Everyone else keeps eyes on the distraction. We'll see what's left. Distraction, Callahan asked sharply. A controlled incident to pull resources away from the archives. Something noisy but harmless. Zephyr's eyes flicked toward the maintenance feeds. Have Riker stage a hydraulic rupture in the hangar. Visible, contained. Enough smoke to look real. Callahan hesitated, then nodded once. Make it happen. Minutes later, alarms blared across the base. Thick plumes of smoke billowed out of the hangar doors, sirens wailing as security scrambled toward the supposed emergency. In the tunnels below, Zephr and Reeves moved fast, flashlights dimmed, sidearms drawn. The air was cool, filtered, carrying the faint hum of server stacks above them. Like old times, Reeves whispered, her voice tight but tinged with memory. Let's hope not exactly like old times, Zephr replied without looking at her. Back then, half the team didn't make it. The silence that followed was heavy. Reeves had been there. She remembered the faces, too. They reached the access panel beneath the archive facility. Zephr knelt, hands moving with quiet precision, removing screws without a sound. She hauled herself up into the underflooring, Reeves close behind. The archive was pristine. Climate-controlled, servers glowing in soft blue rows, physical document storage sealed in reinforced units. On the surface, untouched. But Zephyr's eyes scanned for subtleties, the small, the invisible, and she found them. Scuff marks near the central chamber, microscopic tool scratches around a lock, and there, a filament of bypass wire thin as hair, still clinging to the door seal. They were here, Zephr whispered. Reeves nodded grimly. Inside the central chamber they found it. One containment unit stood ajar, empty. The classification marker burned into the steel, Helix protocol. They got it, Reeves breathed. Not all of it. Zephyr's eyes tracked the manifest. 3 data modules total, 2 are gone, 1 remains. She located the final module, a compact device locked in its cradle. Neurological mapping, she read aloud. The core algorithms. Without this, their system is blind. She secured it, slipping the module into a sealed pouch. But her satisfaction was short-lived. Her gaze swept the chamber again and caught something wrong in the air ducts. Stop, she whispered sharply, holding an arm across Reeves. A faint metallic glint nestled in the ventilation system. Small, sleek, easy to miss. She crouched closer, eyes narrowing, a device strapped to the filter system. "Detonator?" Reeves asked, tension sharpening her whisper. "No," Zephyr's expression darkened. "Delivery system." Reeves' stomach dropped. Gas. "Set on a timer, 20 minutes left." Zephyr's voice stayed calm, but her pulse thudded hard in her throat. "They plan to erase the evidence, kill responders, leave nothing but silence." Together they disabled it with surgical care, hands steady despite the knowledge that one mistake could suffocate half the facility. The reservoir inside confirmed their fears. A chemical agent, refined and lethal. Zephr pocketed the device. Forensics can trace composition, maybe even origin. They swept the rest of the chamber, confirming nothing else had been taken. Then, silently, they slipped back into the tunnels. When they emerged into the command center, the atmosphere was tense. Callahan stood waiting, Reeves at his shoulder. "Report." "They got what they came for," Zephr said flatly. She placed the chemical device on the table with a metallic clink. 2 of 3 Helix modules, interface and implementation, enough to build, not enough to master. Callahan stared at it, face paling. "How did they even know the data was here? I wasn't briefed." "That's the point," Zephr cut in. "This was supposed to be buried so deep only a handful of people in the entire intelligence network even knew it existed. Which means your breach isn't local. It's higher. Much higher." Reeves leaned forward. "Umbra suspected leaks. That's why she was sent. Someone at the top is feeding them." Callahan exhaled, a long, ragged breath. "So what happens now?" Zephyr's gaze was unblinking. "Now we contact Umbra Command and pray we're not already too late." The secure comm line activated, encryption layers folding like shutters. A voice distorted by static answered. "Umbra Actual." Zephr straightened, voice steady. "Spectre reporting, Priority Alpha, Helix protocol compromised, partial breach modules extracted, mapping secured." "Understood. Status of facility." "Contained. Infiltrators exfiltrated. Chemical device neutralized. Local command compromised by higher-level leak. Request immediate extraction team and pursuit authorization." "Granted. Stand by for coordinates." The line clicked out. Zephr turned back to Callahan. His face looked years older than when the day began. "Specialized Umbra unit will arrive within 2 hours. Until then, this base stays locked down. No one in, no one out." He nodded grimly. "And you?" Her eyes moved to the window to the hangar where the Apache she had fixed that morning gleamed beneath harsh light. "My cover here is gone, but my mission continues. They have 2 modules. That means they think they're winning, which means we can track them." Callahan hesitated, then asked the question gnawing at him. "Helix protocol, what is it? Not the classified brief, the truth." Zephyr's jaw worked. Her eyes softened for the first time in hours, haunted but unflinching. "Mind control, Colonel, a neurological interface, a handler connected to multiple operatives at once, soldiers who don't even know they're compromised, the perfect covert asset." The room went silent, every breath caught in the gravity of her words. Callahan's voice cracked. "God help us." Zephr didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed on the Apache outside, her reflection ghosted in the glass. "They don't need God's help," she said quietly. "They already have something far more dangerous: ambition. What happens when the war you buried claws its way back to life?" The command center was a blur of movement, officers barking into radios, analysts poring over fresh feeds, boots pounding across concrete as security doubled their patrols. But Zephr stood apart, hands behind her back, eyes fixed on the chemical device they'd pulled from the archives. It sat on the table like a quiet accusation. "They were never going to leave witnesses," Reeves said softly beside her. "No," Zephr agreed. "They wanted silence just like Caracum." The word hung, uninvited but undeniable. Reeves shot her a look, half warning, half understanding. Callahan, standing a few feet away, frowned at the mention but said nothing. He had learned by now that answers came when Zephr allowed them, not when demanded. An aide hurried over. "Commander, our teams recovered a vehicle convoy leaving the east perimeter 30 minutes ago. 2 organized for deserters. Tracks lead toward the ravine highway." "Show me." The map lit up with satellite overlays, dust trails, heat signatures already fatting into the rugged terrain. Zephr studied it in silence, eyes narrowing. "They're not fleeing," she said finally. "They're rendezvousing." Callahan stepped closer. "With who?" "Whoever paid for Helix." The colonel's jaw tightened. "We can intercept them before they reach the highway." "Not without tipping our hand. They'll have counter-surveillance, and if they think we're on to them, they'll scatter and bury the modules." "So what do you suggest, Commander?" Her voice was steady, deliberate. "We shadow, feed them the illusion of escape. Umbra's pursuit team will arrive in less than 2 hours. We let them converge with their buyer, then we cut out the heart of the network." Callahan stared at her, then shook his head in disbelief. "You talk about 2 hours like we have the luxury. They already have pieces of that weapon system." "Not the core," Zephr cut in sharply. "They can't complete Helix without the mapping data, and I'm holding it." She touched the pouch at her side, where the module rested, cool and heavy. The room seemed to lean toward it, as though everyone could feel its gravity. Captain Nazari entered then, helmet tucked under her arm, flight suit dusted from the earlier sortie. Her gaze swept the room before landing on Zephr. "Commander, my crew is ready for redeployment. Just give the word." Zephr regarded her carefully. The younger woman radiated fire, sharp, restless, unwilling to sit idle. She reminded Zephr of herself years ago before ghosts weighed her every choice. "No redeployment yet," Zephr said. "We're not chasing shadows." Nazari's jaw tightened. "So we sit on our hands while they vanish." "No," Zephyr's tone was quiet, but it carried a finality that silenced the room. "We wait, and when the time comes we strike once. Hard, clean." Nazari exhaled sharply, but she nodded. Respect overruled impatience. When the meeting dispersed, Callahan lingered. His face, lined and weathered, held something beyond duty now, curiosity edged with unease. "Tell me something, Commander. Why you? Why send Umbra's second-in-command to play mechanic on a dusty base at the edge of nowhere?" Zephr didn't answer immediately. Her eyes had drifted to the window again, where the Apache glinted beneath the floodlights. She thought of the sleeve that had betrayed her, of the tattoo that had torn down her cover in a single moment. "Because this isn't about one mission, Colonel," she said finally. "It's about the war after the war, the one fought in shadows, the one no one admits exists until it's too late." He studied her, unsettled. "And Caracum, how does that fit?" For a long moment she didn't speak. The silence stretched, heavy, unbearable. Then she turned, meeting his gaze. "Caracum was the prototype. The scientists we extracted weren't defectors. They were architects. Helix began there. 20 operators died to pull them out, and in the end, we buried the truth so deep even most of Umbra never saw it. I thought it ended in that valley." Her eyes darkened, haunted but hard. "I was wrong." The words landed like lead. Callahan said nothing. Reeves broke the silence. "Commander, the convoy just hit the outer ridge. Drones confirm 3 vehicles heavily shielded. Heat scans show unusual signatures." Zephr moved closer. "Unusual how?" "Cold zones inside the transports, deliberately masked." "Modules," Zephr murmured, "and something else." Her mind ran calculations fast, cold. A normal infiltrator team wouldn't carry that level of shielding, which meant this wasn't just extraction, it was delivery. The buyers were waiting close. She glanced at Callahan. "Maintain shadow distance. Do not engage until I give the order." His voice was tight. "And if they reach the rendezvous before Umbra arrives?" Her reply was soft, almost weary. Then I finish it myself. The colonel studied her face, and for the first time he realized what haunted her wasn't fear of failure. It was certainty of sacrifice. Later in the temporary ops room, Nazari found Zephr alone, staring at the data module in her hand. "You don't trust anyone else to hold it," Nazari said quietly. Zephr didn't turn. "Would you?" Nazari stepped closer, lowering her voice. "You've carried that weight before, at Caracum, and 20 men never came back." The words stung, but Zephr didn't flinch. She turned the module over slowly as though it might bleed. "Do you want to know what it felt like?" she asked. Nazari hesitated. "Yes." "It felt like silence." Zephyr's voice was low, steady, every syllable laced with memory. "Calm's dead. Heartbeats you'd memorized, gone in an instant. And when it was over, when the extraction bird lifted and the valley was just ash and echoes, it felt like someone had carved your name into the cost ledger and left you alive by mistake." Nazari swallowed hard. The silence between them ached. "So why keep doing it?" she asked finally. Zephyr's eyes lifted, meeting hers with the weight of someone who had asked herself the same question 1,000 nights. "Because if I don't, someone else pays, and maybe they don't come back at all." Nazari looked at her then, not as a commander, not as a legend, but as a human being bleeding inside armor too thick to break. She nodded once, slow, and left her to the ghosts. 2 hours stretched into a lifetime. Every minute the convoy moved closer to the highway. Every minute Zephyr's silence grew heavier. Finally, Reeves' voice cut through the tension. "Umbra team inbound. ETA 10 minutes." The room stirred. Callahan straightened. Nazari leaned forward. Zephr didn't move. She simply exhaled once, the faintest sigh of relief. "Maintain shadow," she ordered. "Let them converge." On the feed, the convoy slowed, dust plumes settling as figures appeared on the horizon. Another group, another convoy, armed, organized, the buyers. The two forces drew close, engines idling, silhouettes merging in the fading light. Zephyr's hand tightened on the console. "Umbra, stand by. Wait until the transfer begins, then close the net." The trap was set. But in the quiet heartbeat before impact, Zephr felt it again. The ghosts pressing close, the weight of 23 operators who hadn't made it out of another valley. And for the first time since she walked into the hangar that morning, she allowed herself a single, unspoken thought. What if this time I don't make it back either? What does it cost to step back into the fire when you already know how it ends? The desert ridge spread out like a scar across the horizon, jagged stone painted red by the setting sun. In the fading light, two convoys faced each other in silence, engines rumbling, dust hanging in the still air. From the command feed, Zephr watched every frame, every twitch of movement. "This is it," Reeves whispered beside her. The infiltrator convoy idled, masked transports forming a shield. Opposite them, the buyer's vehicles sat heavier, armored, bristling with weapons not standard issue anywhere Zephr had seen. These weren't freelancers. They were organized, trained, and dangerous. "Transfers beginning," the drone operator said. On the screen, silhouettes moved, crates lifted, cases exchanged. One vehicle's shielding cracked open just enough to reveal the glint of containment units. The stolen Helix modules. Zephyr's hand hovered near the comm switch. Her pulse was steady, but her chest tightened with every second. This was the moment. Cut the deal here and the chain snapped. Hesitate and the modules vanished into the dark. "Umbra team on site," came the encrypted transmission, cool and controlled. Voices of ghosts who lived in shadow. Spectre, awaiting command. Zephr exhaled once quiet, then execute. The desert erupted. Black silhouettes poured from the ridge, Umbra operators moving with precision honed in the kind of wars no one admitted to. Fire cracked sharp across the valley. Vehicles lit with muzzle flash. The buyers shouted, scrambled, fell. "Contact confirmed," Umbra comms cut through. securing modules. From the command center, cheers erupted, but Zephr didn't move. Her eyes tracked one figure, just one, slipping through chaos. The infiltrator's handler, face half hidden beneath a scarf, clutching a case not logged in the manifests. Not a module, something else. Target moving north, Zephr snapped. Umbra Vector 3 cut him off. But her words caught as she saw it. The handler wasn't running to escape. He was running towards something. The ground near the ridge flared faintly, too faint for most to see. But Zephr saw. She knew that glow, charges, buried, primed. Her stomach clenched. Stop pursuit. Mines on Vector 3, reroute. Too late. The ridge erupted in a concussive blast, flame and rock tearing skyward. 2 operators vanished in fire, bodies shredded before their shouts even reached comms. In the command center, voices froze, swallowed by static and silence. Zephyr's hand gripped the console, knuckles white. Umbra, regroup, fall back to secondary cover, do not chase. Spectre 2 KIA, came the grim reply. Module secured, handler in the wind. She shut her eyes just for a second. Another valley, another ambush, another set of names that would never come home. Commander, Callahan's voice was tight, waiting. She opened her eyes, voice flat, cold. Pull Umbra back, we stabilize what we have. But the handler, he's gone. Her words landed heavy, final. On the screens, the firefight slowed. The buyer's convoy lay in ruin, vehicles burning, survivors scattering into desert night. Umbra operators moved with lethal efficiency, gathering the stolen crates. 2 bodies lay still among them, marked only by the silence of their comms. Nazari's voice crackled from her Apache circling above. Visual confirms, 2 operators down, convoy neutralized, modules intact. Commander, do we pursue the handler? No, Zephr repeated. Her tone didn't rise, but the weight in it silenced any argument. We secure what we can. We don't feed his escape by bleeding more lives into the sand. The feed dimmed, static lacing the edges. The sun finally dipped, shadows swallowing the ridge. And with it, something inside Zephr tightened, locked, sealed shut again. Back at base, the atmosphere was fractured, half victory, half grief. Umbra's transport offloaded the recovered crates into secure storage. 2 stretchers followed, draped in black, carried in silence. Zephr watched as they passed, eyes fixed, unblinking. Reeves stood beside her, jaw clenched, words unspoken. Callahan shifted uncomfortably, as though the weight of the room pressed against him. Even Nazari, fresh from landing her Apache, stayed quiet, helmet cradled like something sacred. Finally, Callahan broke the silence. 2 dead, but the modules are safe. You did what you came for. Zephr turned slowly, her gaze cutting through him. No, Colonel, I failed. He blinked. You, what are you talking about? You turned the ambush, secured the intelligence, stopped. Helix is still compromised. The handler escaped with something else, something we didn't anticipate, and I lost people under my command again. The words cracked like glass. For the first time, Callahan saw past the armor. She wasn't boasting, wasn't cold. She was bleeding inside. Nazari stepped forward carefully. Commander, with respect, you didn't lose them. They chose the risk. They knew what they signed up for. Zephyr's voice sharpened, cutting through. That doesn't make it easier. The room stilled. Reeves laid a hand on her shoulder, firm but gentle. They followed you, Spectre. Not because they had to, because they believed in you. Don't dishonor that by calling it failure. For a heartbeat, Zephr didn't answer. Her throat tightened, but her face stayed steady. Then she nodded once, just barely. Callahan cleared his throat, forcing structure back into the room. What now? You said this wasn't over. Zephr looked at the crates, at the single secured module still in her possession, then at the empty air where the handler had vanished. They'll rebuild. They have 2/3 of Helix, enough to attempt replication. They'll adapt, shift. They always do, which means, her voice trailed into silence, then returned harder, which means we hunt. Her eyes lifted to the officers around her, to Reeves, to Nazari, to Callahan. Each of them waiting, uneasy, but caught in her gravity now. I'll lead the pursuit. Umbra will mobilize. This doesn't stop until Helix is buried so deep no one can resurrect it. Callahan hesitated, then nodded. There was no authority in the room higher than hers, not in spirit, not in will. Later that night, alone in her quarters, Zephr sat on the edge of her bunk, boots still on, gear unstripped. The data module lay on the table before her, its metal casing catching the dim light. She stared at it as though it might open old scars. Her hand lifted, hesitated above it. She could almost feel the weight of those lost at Caracum pressing behind her, voices whispering in the silence. 23 went in. 3 came back. Her throat tightened. She hadn't cried in years. Not at funerals, not at briefings, not even in silence. She didn't now. But the ache in her chest felt close. Too close. The door clicked. Reeves stepped in, quiet. She didn't speak at first, just leaned against the wall, arms folded. Finally, you're carrying them again, aren't you? Zephr didn't look up. I never put them down. Reeves' voice softened. You couldn't have saved them, not then, not today. You can't carry ghosts forever. Zephyr's hand finally lowered onto the module, cold metal beneath her palm. She closed her eyes. Maybe not, she whispered, but someone has to remember the cost. How do you chase an enemy that knows your every move before you make it? 2 days after the ambush, the desert base no longer hummed with routine. It pulsed with something else: urgency, suspicion, the aftertaste of betrayal. Security teams doubled their patrols. Umbra operators rotated in and out of shadow briefings, and yet the air felt brittle. Everyone sensed the truth. The enemy was already 3 steps ahead. Zephr Thorne hadn't slept. She stood at the edge of the command center, arms folded, eyes on the world map now lit in cold blue. Lines of intercepted data traced across continents, faint, scattered, but forming a pattern only she seemed to see. They moved the modules, she said finally, voice flat. East, through shell routes, falsified manifests, diplomatic covers. Someone powerful is shielding them. Colonel Callahan leaned over the table, frustration etched deep. And we just let them. Zephyr's gaze cut toward him. We let them run because you don't chase prey straight into the open. You wait until it circles back to where it feeds. Which is where? Captain Nazari asked. Her voice carried sharp impatience, but her eyes had softened since the ambush, since she'd seen Zephr break for a heartbeat under the weight of 2 fresh deaths. Zephr tapped the map, finger landing on a coastal city halfway across the world. Here, Port of Lerna. Smuggling hub, black market auctions, anonymous transfers. They'll try to move the modules offshore, too exposed to keep inland. Reeves checked her datapad, brow furrowing. Signals intelligence confirms chatter in Lerna. Heavy encryption, but timing fits. Callahan blew out a breath. So we move there, hit them hard. No, Zephyr's tone cracked the air like a whip. She straightened, eyes sharp. We move quiet. 1 squad, no broadcasts, no leaks. If they suspect Umbra's closing in, they'll disappear again. And next time we won't even see the smoke trail. Callahan met her gaze, uneasy. He had commanded men his entire life, but her authority wasn't born of rank. It was carved out of fire. Umbra Actual has already greenlit insertion, Zephr added. My team takes point. Reeves, you're with me. Captain Nazari, you'll fly cover. Nazari stiffened. Ma'am, I'm not Umbra. No, Zephr agreed. But you proved at the ridge you can keep your head when the ground erupts. That's what I need in the sky. Nazari absorbed the words, a flicker of pride lighting her face before discipline smothered it. Understood. The room emptied into movement, orders cascading outward. But Zephr stayed still for a long moment, eyes lingering on the map. Lerna, another valley waiting, another set of ghosts sharpening their knives. The insertion came under cover of night. The city glowed like a sprawl of neon arteries, life pulsing even as war moved in its veins unseen. The team moved through alleys slick with rain, boots silent, weapons low. Reeves whispered into her mic, signal trace locked, warehouse district Pier 12. Zephyr nodded once. Her movements were fluid, controlled, but inside her chest the old weight pressed harder. She had led too many into shadows like this, too many who hadn't come back. Eyes open, she murmured. They reached the pier. A warehouse loomed against the sea, rust streaking its walls, floodlights cutting sharp beams across the slick ground. Voices echoed faintly inside, men shouting, crates shifting, the sound of deals struck in languages not meant for official reports. Nazari's voice came through the comm, low from her observation post above. Multiple vehicles at the dock, armed escort, looks like an auction. Zephyr crouched, peering through a crack in the door. She saw it then, the modules. Two sealed cases stacked on a crate, men in tailored suits circling them like vultures. Buyers, high-level, connected. Her stomach knotted. Helix wasn't just a rogue project anymore. It was currency. And once it sold, the world would never see it again. "Commander," Reeves whispered, "do we move?" Zephyr's breath caught. She remembered Caracum again, the moment she'd chosen to press forward, 20 lives burning for 3. She remembered the look in Nazari's eyes when she asked why Zephr still did this. She exhaled slow, "No, not yet." Reeves shot her a sharp glance. "They're about to sell. If we hit them now, we kill a few mercenaries. The modules vanish into shadow. We wait until the buyers commit. When hands touch those cases, that's when we cut the line. We take not just the bait, but the fishermen." Reeves hesitated, then nodded. She knew better than to argue when Zephyr's eyes burned like that. Minutes stretched, each one a knife's edge. Zephr crouched in the dark, pulse steady, every muscle coiled. She thought of the 2 bodies they'd draped in black. She thought of the 20 before them, and she thought of the silence that always followed. Finally, movement. A buyer stepped forward, briefcase in hand. He set it down, opened it, crisp bills, unmarked. Another man reached for the Helix case. Zephyr's whisper cut sharp, "Execute." The warehouse exploded into controlled violence. Umbra swept in from every angle, shadows turned to fire. Reeves dropped 2 guards before they even turned. Nazari's overwatch unleashed precision bursts, cutting headlights, plunging half the dock into darkness. Zephr moved like a blade through smoke. She didn't waste motion, didn't waste breath. One man lunged. She dropped him with a strike that was more muscle memory than thought. Another fired blind, she was already gone, sliding behind cover, weapon rising, shot clean. The buyers panicked, scattering, some screamed, some drew hidden pistols, most fell. But amid the chaos, Zephr saw him, the handler. The same scarf, the same steady stride, calm where others broke. He wasn't running this time, he was watching her. Their eyes met across the warehouse. His lips curled, not in fear, but in recognition. Zephr froze, just for a breath. And in that breath, he vanished into the smoke. "Spectre," Reeves' voice cracked in her comm. "We've got the modules secured." Zephyr's eyes swept the smoke, her weapon ready, but the handler was gone, slipped into night like he belonged to it. She clenched her jaw, forcing her voice level. "Umbra exfil, now, before reinforcements converge." The team moved fast, crates lifted, boots slapping against wet pavement. Vehicles roared to life. Within minutes they were gone, leaving behind only bodies and fire. On the transport, Reeves secured the cases. Both accounted for, no damage. The operators exhaled, some grinning, some too wired to even speak. But Zephr sat apart, silent, staring at the smoke trailing behind them. Reeves finally asked, "You saw him, didn't you?" Zephyr's throat tightened. "Yes." "The handler?" "Yes." "And?" Zephr didn't answer at first. She closed her eyes, the image replaying. His calm, his recognition. The way he looked at her as though he knew something she didn't. Finally, she said it, her voice hollow. He wasn't just watching me, he was waiting for me. The cabin fell silent. Reeves stared. The operators shifted uneasily. Because in those words lay a truth none of them wanted to name. This wasn't a hunt. This was a trap, and Zephr had walked into it again. What happens when the hunter realizes the prey was never running at all? The warehouse raid should have ended it. The modules were back in Umbra custody, the buyers scattered, the city cleansed in silence. But Zephr knew better. The way the handler had looked at her calm, waiting, carved into her chest like a knife. She wasn't chasing him, he was drawing her in. And he wasn't finished. Umbra's strike team exfiltrated at dawn, their transport skimming low over dark waters. The crates sat secured, steel clasps locked, guards posted. But Zephr sat apart in the rear, eyes unblinking, mind burning. Caracum, the valley, the silence. She had believed she carried those ghosts alone, but the handler's eyes had said otherwise, as if he knew the shape of them, as if he had put them there. Reeves sat across from her, helmet off, hair damp with sweat. She studied Zephr for a long time before speaking. "You think this isn't over?" Zephyr's jaw tightened. "It is." Reeves frowned. "We have the modules." 2 modules, not the third, and not the handler. He didn't care about the deal. He wanted me here. He wanted this confrontation. Reeves leaned forward, voice low. "Then let's end it together." Zephyr's eyes softened, just briefly. "You already followed me into one valley. You don't need to follow me into another." Reeves didn't flinch. "Then stop calling it following, call it standing beside." The transport shook with turbulence, but Zephyr's chest shook harder with something she wouldn't name. They landed at an offshore Umbra station, steel platforms rising from gray waves, secure but temporary. The crates were carried below, locked under layers of clearance. Operators dispersed. The night pressed heavy with salt air and silence. Zephr didn't rest. She couldn't. She wandered the catwalks alone, the sea clawing at metal beneath her boots. Her eyes stayed on the horizon, dark and endless. The voice came from the shadows. "You never asked why you were really sent, Spectre." Zephr spun, weapon raised. But the figure that stepped from the dark wasn't an intruder. It was Umbra's encrypted liaison, face half hidden behind static mask, voice distorted. "Command didn't send you because of your skills," the voice said. "They sent you because of Caracum." Zephyr's chest tightened. "Explain." "Because the handler you chase isn't just an enemy. He was Caracum. The one who fed intel, who set the ambush, who bled your team dry. He survived, and now he's back for what he started." The words struck like gunfire. For a moment, Zephyr's vision blurred. 23 operators, 20 who hadn't made it out, and now the face of their death had looked her in the eyes and smiled. Her grip on the weapon tightened until her knuckles whitened. "Where?" "Already moving toward the third module, the one you hold. He'll come for it, for you. That's why you were sent, not to guard the modules, to draw him out." Zephyr's breath left her slow. The truth wasn't a relief. It was a sentence. She wasn't just the hunter, she was the bait. The liaison faded back into static and shadow, leaving her alone on the catwalk, sea spray cold on her face. She lowered the weapon but not her guard. Somewhere out there, the man who had ended Caracum was waiting, and now so was she. The attack came just before dawn. Silent boats cut through gray water, too small for radar, too fast for defense. By the time alarms sounded, black-clad figures were already scaling the station's steel sides, weapons whispering death in muffled bursts. Zephr moved before anyone else. She didn't need orders, she had been waiting. Sidearm drawn, she pushed through corridors of gunfire and shouts, moving toward the archives where the third module lay sealed. She knew that's where he would go. Reeves joined her at the stairwell, blood streaking her temple. "They're inside, heavy." "Then we go heavier," Zephr said, voice cold steel. They pushed upward, floor by floor, carving through resistance. The enemy moved with unnerving coordination, too coordinated. And as Zephr cut down another, she realized why. Helix, even incomplete, they were testing it. The operatives fought like extensions of a single hand. No hesitation, no fear, no wasted motion, just precision. Her chest turned to ice. This was what Caracum had bled for. This was what 20 had died to stop, and it was alive again. They reached the archive chamber, doors breached, alarms screaming. And there, standing before the final case, scarf pulled down, face bare, was the handler. His eyes met hers, and he smiled. "Spectre," his voice was calm, almost warm. "I was wondering how long it would take." Zephr leveled her weapon. "You're not leaving with it." He tilted his head. "I already have what I need, but you're the piece they never understood. Caracum didn't break you, it made you." Her finger tightened on the trigger. "It destroyed 23 operators." "And left you alive," he countered. "Do you really think that was an accident? I spared you." The words hit harder than any bullet. She froze, breath catching. "I wanted you alive," he continued, stepping closer. "Because you were proof that Helix works. That someone like you, disciplined, haunted, relentless, could be pushed past breaking and still stand. That's what Caracum was, Spectre. Not an ambush, a trial, and you passed." Her chest heaved. Rage warred with horror. She saw again the valley, the fire, the silence. And now he was rewriting it as something else. "Those men and women weren't a trial," she said, voice shaking but hard. "They were lives, and you ended them." His smile faltered just slightly. "And now," she whispered, raising her weapon higher, "I end you." The fight erupted before words could settle. He moved fast, impossibly fast, but so did she. Bullets sparked against steel, footsteps slammed against concrete. Reeves fired from the flank, cutting down advancing operatives. The handler lunged, striking with brutal precision, forcing Zephr into close combat. Fists, elbows, the scrape of steel against skin. Every blow echoed with ghosts. Every strike carried the weight of Caracum. Finally she caught him, a twist, a reversal, his weapon skittering across the floor. She pressed her sidearm to his chest, breath ragged, eyes burning. "You don't get to rewrite what you did," she said. "You don't get to call it purpose. You don't get to live." He smiled one last time, bitter, defiant. "Then you'll never know if Helix already lives elsewhere." Her finger tightened. One shot, his body crumpled. The smile died with him. Silence crashed down. Reeves lowered her weapon slowly, eyes on Zephr. "It's done." But Zephr shook her head, chest heaving. "No, this was only one thread. There will be more." She looked at the case, at the final module. Then at Reeves, at Nazari's voice crackling faintly over the comms, demanding status. Her shoulders straightened, her voice steadied. "We bury Helix deeper. We hunt every trace. And if it takes the rest of my life, I'll make sure no one ever carries what Caracum carried again." Hours later the station was secure, bodies removed, crates locked under heavier guard. Umbra operatives filed reports in silence. Zephr stood alone on the catwalk again, sea stretching endless before her. Reeves approached but didn't speak, waiting. Finally Zephyr's voice rose, quiet but sure. "Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts." Her eyes stayed on the horizon, where dawn broke in pale light. "And sometimes the only way to honor the dead is to make sure no one else joins them." The waves crashed below. The sun rose above. And for the first time since Caracum, Zephr felt not peace but purpose. The hunt wasn't over. But neither was she.